Jasmine Crockett is Trump's sister? Is it true or not? You will find out in this video. So like and subscribe and we start. The hall was overcrowded, mostly elderly people, their faces marked by years of hard labor and even harder convictions. They had come to hear her speech about redistricting, a contentious issue in Texas where lines on a map could determine who held power. At 44, Jasmine was a rising star in the Democratic Party, a congresswoman whose fiery speeches and uncompromising fight for marginalized communities had earned her both devoted supporters and fierce enemies. She adjusted the microphone, her dark eyes scanning the audience. She wore an elegant blue suit, but beneath the polished exterior was the strength of someone who had grown up in struggle. The room fell silent as she began to speak. "We stand at a crossroads," Jasmine started, her voice filling the space. "This isn't just about how we draw these lines. It's about whether we're ready to give a voice to those who've been silenced for decades. Are we ready to fight for justice?" Applause rippled through the crowd, though not everyone clapped. In the back rows sat a man in his 60s, wearing a faded "Make America Great Again" cap. His arms were crossed, his gaze icy. A few people around him whispered among themselves, their faces skeptical. Jasmine noticed them, but didn't look away. She was used to such stares. After the speech came the canned. The microphone passed from one hand to another. Most questions were about local issues, taxes, roads, schools. But then the man in the cap took the mic. He stood slowly, his voice low and sharp. "Ms. Crockett," he began, pronouncing her name with a hint of mockery. "You talk about justice, but how can we trust you? There are rumors you're not who you claim to be. They say you have connections with the very people you criticize so loudly. Care to explain?" The room froze. Jasmine felt her heart skip a beat. She was used to attacks. The political arena wasn't kind, especially to a black woman unafraid to speak truth. But this was new. Rumors? Connections? She forced a smile, though unease tightened in her chest. "I'm always open to dialogue, sir," she replied calmly, even as her mind raced for a response. "But perhaps you could clarify. What rumors are you referring to? I don't care for mysteries." The man smirked, but his eyes stayed cold. He pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket and held it up like evidence. "People say you're not just some Dallas lawyer who suddenly became a congresswoman. They say you have family ties. And not to just anyone, to Donald Trump himself. A sister, they claim. Is it true?" The room erupted in murmurs. Some laughed. Others shouted in outrage. Jasmine's cheeks burned, not with shame, but fury. It was absurd, yet she knew how rumors worked. In a world where truth often drowned in waves of misinformation, even the most ridiculous lie could take root if framed right. She clenched her fists behind the podium, but kept her voice steady. "Are you serious?" she said, allowing a slight smile to defuse the tension. "I thought I'd heard it all, but this is new. Sir, I was born in St. Louis, raised in a middle-class family, and the only power I had as a child was convincing my mom to buy me ice cream. If you have proof, I'd love to see it. But let's talk about real issues, not fiction." The audience laughed, but the man in the cap didn't back down. He unfolded the paper and began reading, his voice growing bolder. "It says here your mother, when she was young, had ties to the Trump family. That you were adopted, that you're Donald's illegitimate daughter. Do you deny it?" Jasmine felt the air in the room thicken. She saw people exchanging glances, some leaning forward, eyes gleaming with curiosity. This wasn't just a rumor, it was a bomb, one that could destroy everything she'd fought for. But instead of exploding in anger, she took a deep breath and locked eyes with the man. "Sir," she said, her voice quiet but piercing, "I don't know where you got this story, but I know one thing. The truth always wins. I'll answer any question, but I won't let lies distract us from why we're here. Let's talk about redistricting, about schools, about our veterans. If you have proof, present it. If not, sit down." The room erupted in applause. The man in the cap slowly sat, his face red with anger. But Jasmine knew this wasn't over. The rumor, however absurd, had already taken root, and she had to act fast to stop it. That evening, Jasmine sat in her office, the city lights flickering outside. The smell of coffee and old papers filled the room, but she couldn't focus. Her aide, April, a sharp-witted young woman with an even sharper tongue, flipped through stacks of documents. "Jasmine, this is insane," April said, fingers flying over her keyboard. "I checked. This story appeared on some shady site 2 weeks ago. Then a few anonymous X accounts picked it up, and now it's spreading like wildfire. Someone's pushing this deliberately." Jasmine leaned back in her chair, tapping her fingers on the desk. Anger mixed with exhaustion. Politics was a dirty game, but this was different. This was personal. "Who's behind it?" she asked, her voice steel beneath the calm. April sighed. "Don't know yet. But I've seen this playbook before. This isn't just trolling. Someone with money and influence wants to discredit you. The question is why?" Jasmine nodded. Her blunt criticism of certain political figures, especially Trump allies, had made her a target. But a connection to Trump himself? Even her enemies wouldn't go that far. "All right," she said, standing. "We're not sitting idle. Dig up everything you can on that site and who's spreading this. And I'll talk to people." April raised an eyebrow. "Talk? To whom?" "The ones who believe it," Jasmine replied. "If they think rumors can destroy me, they're wrong. I won't hide. I'll face them and tell the truth." The next morning, Jasmine stood before a small group in a local cafe frequented by retirees. The smell of fresh coffee and fried donuts hung in the air. These were people who'd heard the rumor, older Dallas residents, many Republican voters. They weren't her usual audience, which was exactly why she was here. "I've heard what's being said about me," she began, standing without a podium or microphone. "I could ignore it, but I believe in truth. So let's talk. Who here has heard I'm supposedly Donald Trump's sister?" A few hands rose hesitantly. A woman in her 70s, gray hair in a bun, spoke first. "I saw it online," she said, voice trembling. "There were documents. I don't know if it's true, but why would someone make that up?" Jasmine nodded. "Good question. And I want you all to know, I have no connection to Donald Trump. I'm Jasmine Crockett, daughter of a teacher and a postal worker. But I don't blame you for wondering. Rumors are meant to divide us. So let's do what's stronger than rumors. Let's talk." A man in the corner, his hands calloused, shirt faded, raised his hand. "Then why's someone spreading this? You don't just become a target for no reason." Jasmine smiled, but her eyes were serious. "Because the truth I speak makes some uncomfortable. But I'm not here to argue. I'm here to listen. Tell me what worries you, and let's find common ground." The conversation lasted hours. People shared fears about the economy, changes in the city, their grandchildren's future. Jasmine listened, asked questions, even joked. Slowly, the tension in the cafe eased. That night, back home, Jasmine got a message from April. "Found something. You need to see this." Attached was a screenshot, an intercepted email detailing a disinformation campaign funded by donors linked to her political opponents. But the strangest detail? The name mentioned in the email, Trump. Jasmine's chest tightened. This wasn't confirmation of the rumor, but it meant someone was using Trump's name to destroy her. And she had to find out who and why. She stood by the window, staring at Dallas skyline. The rumor was just the beginning. The real fight lay ahead, and she was ready. But this time, she wouldn't fight with shouts. She'd fight with dialogue. And maybe, just maybe, that would change everything. Jasmine Crockett sat at her kitchen table in her modest Dallas apartment, cradling a cup of cold tea. Outside, the city hummed, distant sirens, the rumble of cars, muffled voices of neighbors. The smell of dinner cooking in the next apartment seeped through the walls, mingling with the faint scent of her lavender candle. She rubbed her temples wearily, her eyes burning from sleepless nights. The screenshot of the email April had sent her lay open on her laptop, each word a hammer blow. The campaign against Crockett must be aggressive. Use the Trump connection, it will draw attention. Funding secured. Details via secure channel. There was no signature, but the name Trump stood out as if written in red. Jasmine knew this wasn't proof of a familial link, but someone was deliberately weaving the former president's name into her story to discredit her, and who had the resources to orchestrate such a sophisticated attack. She leaned back in her chair, fingers drumming the table. Politics had always been dirty, but this was new. A carefully spun web of lies designed to erode her reputation among older voters who still remembered a time when rumors spread not online, but in church halls and diners. These people, her constituents, valued honesty, but were also vulnerable to stories that preyed on their fears and biases. And someone knew that. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was April. "Jasmine, I dug up something." Her aide's voice was tense but tinged with triumph. "That site where the rumor first appeared? It's registered to a shell company in Delaware. But I traced the transactions. The money leads back to a political consultant who's worked for several GOP candidates in Texas. And guess what? One of them is your next opponent, Roy Harris." Jasmine pressed her lips together. Roy Harris, an oil tycoon and hardline conservative, was notorious for his aggressive campaign tactics against her in the last election. He wasn't above dirty tricks, but this was extreme even for him. Or was it? "Do we have proof?" she asked, her voice steady but edged with steel. "Only circumstantial so far," April admitted. "But I'm working on it. There's more. This consultant, David Klein, has ties to a group that funds viral content on X. They specialize in explosive stories. And this Trump rumor? Their handiwork." Jasmine nodded, though April couldn't see her. "Good. Keep digging. And be careful. If this is high stakes, they won't stop." She hung up and checked the clock. It was nearly midnight, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, she opened her laptop and scrolled through X. The rumor was spreading like wildfire. Jasmine Crockett, Trump's secret sister, Dallas scandal. The truth about the Congresswoman. Why is she hiding her past? Each post was a knife to the gut, but she forced herself to read. Some comments mocked her. Others were outright vicious. But a few gave her pause. If this is true, why does she oppose him? Maybe it's family drama. She shut the laptop and stood, walking to the window. Dallas glittered below like distant stars, but she felt alone in this fight. Her career, her reputation, everything she'd fought for, could crumble over one well-crafted lie. But she wouldn't surrender. Truth was her strongest weapon. And she'd use it, just not the way her enemies expected. The next morning, Jasmine stood outside a small church on the outskirts of Dallas. The building was old, its paint peeling, but inside smelled of fresh flowers and wood polish. This was where elderly parishioners gathered, many of them her voters. She knew the rumor had reached them too. Last night, Mrs. Edna, a 78-year-old widow who always brought her homemade cookies to town halls, had called. "Sweetheart, folks are talking nonsense, but I want the truth from you," she'd said. Jasmine entered the hall, where about 30 people had assembled. Most were over 60, their faces a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Her heart pounded, but she made herself smile. "Good morning," she began, her voice warm but firm. "I know you've heard things about me lately. And I'm here to talk, not as your congresswoman, but as Jasmine, the person you've known." She told her story, her childhood in St. Louis, her mother the teacher, her father the mail carrier. She spoke of her struggles in politics, the racism and sexism she'd faced, and how she'd refused to back down. Then she addressed the rumor. "They say I'm Donald Trump's sister," she said, and nervous laughter rippled through the room. I could laugh it off. But rumors hurt. They make us doubt people we trust. So I want you to know, it's a lie. And I'm finding out who's spreading it and why. A man in the front row, his beard gray and shirt faded, raised his hand. Ms. Crockett, I don't know if it's true, but why would someone make this up? You don't become a target for no reason. Jasmine nodded, meeting his gaze. You're right, Mr. Wilson. This isn't random. Someone wants you to doubt me because I fight for things they don't like, fair taxes, better schools, our community's rights. But I don't blame you for asking. I'm here to answer. Mrs. Edna, in her floral dress, spoke next. Honey, I believe you. But folks say there are documents. Have you seen them? Jasmine sighed, but kept smiling. Mrs. Edna, I've only seen screenshots and online posts. If someone has real documents, I'd gladly look. But I know who I am, and the truth always comes out. The meeting lasted an hour. People asked questions, shared concerns, even argued. But Jasmine listened, answered, and sometimes joked. As she left, Mrs. Edna pulled her into a tight hug. You hang in there, child, she whispered. We're with you. That afternoon, Jasmine met April in a small downtown office. The air smelled of coffee and printer paper, but the mood was tense. April spread documents across the table. Here's what we've got, she said. David Klein, Harris's consultant, hired a group to forge a birth certificate, claiming you're Trump's illegitimate daughter. It's laughable, but convincing to anyone who doesn't fact-check. Jasmine picked up a sheet. The forgery was meticulous, aged paper, vintage font, even a fake seal. But she spotted a flaw. The birth year was wrong. She was born in 1981. The document said 1979. They rushed, she said coldly. That's their mistake. April nodded. But there's more. The money trail leads to a donor linked to Trump's inner circle. Not Trump himself, but someone close. And that scares me. Jasmine's chest tightened. This wasn't just politics. It was an attack meant to destroy not only her career, but her community's trust. But she wouldn't let it. We fight back, she said, eyes blazing. But not how they expect. We gather evidence, and I'll keep talking, not in Congress halls, but in churches, cafes, on street corners. If they want war, they'll get it. But I'll fight with truth. Over the next week, Jasmine held meetings across Dallas, in parks, libraries, community centers. She didn't shy from the rumors. She confronted them head-on, answering questions and sharing her story. Slowly, people began listening. Elderly voters who doubted her came to hear her speak. Some apologized, others asked harder questions. But they all felt her sincerity. One evening, after an event, an elderly Vietnam veteran named Henry approached her. His hands trembled as he handed her a letter. I wrote this for you, he said quietly. I don't understand politics much, but I know when someone fights for truth. You remind me of my daughter. She unfolded the note. In shaky handwriting it read, MS. Crockett, don't give up. We see you. We believe in you. A lump rose in her throat. This was why she fought, not for power or fame, but for the people who trusted her. Meanwhile, April uncovered more. Edward Blake, an oil executive who'd lost millions due to Jasmine's regulations, was funding the smear campaign. He had a personal vendetta and deep pockets. Jasmine knew the battle wasn't over. One misstep, and the rumor could become truth to thousands. But she had an advantage now. People had seen her, heard her, and they were starting to believe. That night, on her balcony, Jasmine stared at the stars over Dallas. The storm wasn't over, but she was ready. She'd fight not with anger, but with dialogue. Not with lies, but with truth. And maybe, just maybe, that would change everything. She didn't know how this would end. But every step forward was a victory. Not just for her, but for everyone who believed in justice. Jasmine Crockett stood in the packed hall of a Dallas community center, where the air was thick with the scent of coffee, freshly baked rolls. And a faint aroma of autumn leaves drifting through the open windows. Over the past weeks, she had held dozens of such meetings, each one a test, not only of her endurance, but also of her belief that truth could prevail in an era when lies spread faster than lightning. Today's meeting was special. The local media, which had initially relished the rumor of her connection to Trump, now sat in the front row, their cameras flashing and reporters scribbling furiously. But Jasmine didn't look at them. Her gaze was fixed on the people, elderly men and women who had come to hear her, young activists holding signs that read "Truth with Jasmine," and even a few skeptics sitting with crossed arms in the back rows. She knew this might be her last chance to convince the community before the rumor took root for good. April and her team had gathered enough evidence to expose the disinformation campaign, but Jasmine understood that facts alone weren't enough. People, especially the older generation, wanted more than documents. They wanted a story that would touch their hearts. And she was ready to tell it. A few days earlier, Jasmine and April had sat in a cramped office. Surrounded by stacks of papers and empty coffee cups, the smell of old carpet and printer toner filled the room, while outside, the evening hum of Dallas buzzed. April laid out the final pieces of evidence before Jasmine. Bank transfers, emails, and even a recorded phone conversation between David Klein, a political consultant, and Edward Blake, an oil magnate who had funded the campaign against her. In the recording, Klein coldly discussed how the Trump connection was meant to ruin Jasmine's reputation, distract from her legislative initiatives, and sow distrust among her voters. "It's ironclad," April said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "We can hand this to the press, file a lawsuit, take them down." Jasmine nodded, but her face remained pensive. She knew a lawsuit could drag on for years, and a media scandal would only fuel the fire. Her enemies were counting on chaos, on sensational headlines, mutual accusations, and a divided community. She couldn't let them win. "We'll do it differently," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. "We'll show people the truth, but not through shouting or lawsuits. We'll talk to them, and we'll give them something they can believe in." April raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Are you sure? It's risky. People love drama." Jasmine smiled, her eyes flashing. "They love the truth, April. Sometimes you just have to present it in a way that they feel." Now, standing before the crowd in the community center, Jasmine felt her heart beat faster. She took a deep breath, sensing the autumn air mingling with the warmth of the bodies in the hall. Her blue suit was impeccable, but she had taken off her jacket and rolled up her shirt sleeves, as if to say, "I'm one of you." The microphone trembled slightly in her hand. But she didn't need it. Her voice filled the room. "I know the past few weeks have been tough," she began, her tone warm but confident. "You've heard a lot about me. Some of you believed the rumors. And I don't blame you. We live in a time when the truth struggles to break through the lies. But I'm here to tell you who I am and why I fight." She told her story, not as a congresswoman, but as the daughter of a teacher and a postal worker, as a woman who had faced injustice but never backed down. She spoke about her work, about the laws she championed to protect veterans, improve schools, and make health care more accessible. And then she addressed the rumor. "They say I'm Donald Trump's sister," she said, and the hall erupted in laughter. She raised a hand, calling for silence. "I could ignore it, but I know how rumors hurt. They make us doubt each other. So I want you to know the truth." She explained the disinformation campaign, but didn't dwell on the details. Instead, she displayed the forged birth certificate on a large screen behind her and pointed out the mistake in the birth date. The hall laughed again, but Jasmine quickly steered the conversation to something more serious. "Someone wanted you to doubt me," she said. "Someone who doesn't like that I'm fighting for you. But I won't give up, and I believe you won't either. We're stronger than lies when we stand together." She invited a few people to the stage, Mrs. Edna Henry, the veteran who had written her letter, and a young activist named Marcus who had helped organize the meetings. each shared their story, why they supported Jasmine, why they believed in her. Mrs. Edna, holding Jasmine's hand, said, "This girl is ours, and we won't let her be hurt." The hall exploded in applause. Even the skeptics in the back rows joined in, their faces softening. Jasmine ended her speech quietly but powerfully. "The truth doesn't always win on its own," she said. "It needs our help. So let's fight for it together. Not with shouting, not with anger, but with dialogue. Talk to your neighbors, your friends, your family. Tell them we won't let lies divide us." As she stepped off the stage, people approached her, hugging her, thanking her. Henry, the veteran, gripped her hand tightly. "You did it, girl," he whispered, his eyes glistening with tears. The next day, Jasmine's story made headlines. But this time, it wasn't rumors, it was the truth. Local newspapers wrote, "Congresswoman Crockett confronts lies with dignity. Dallas rallies around Jasmine." Even national outlets picked up the story, praising her for turning the attack to her advantage. April handed the evidence of the disinformation campaign to law enforcement, and though the legal process might take time, David Klein and Edward Blake were already losing influence as their names surfaced in the press. Jasmine didn't celebrate the victory. She knew the fight wasn't over. But she saw changes in the letters from voters, in the posts on X, where people shared her speech, in the calls from colleagues offering support. Her community had grown stronger, more united, and that was more than she could have hoped for. That night, Jasmine sat on her apartment balcony, holding Henry's letter. The lights of Dallas twinkled below, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of autumn leaves. She unfolded the letter and read his words again. "We see you. We believe you." She smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. The rumor hadn't destroyed her. It had made her stronger. And though new challenges lay ahead, she knew she wasn't alone. Every step she took was the beginning of change, not just for her, but for everyone who believed in justice. She looked up at the stars and thought, this is just the beginning.